But with a hammer, you can't do that. The temperature went down 30 degrees as we reached the top, and we were in serious trouble within minutes. Because within minutes, the wetness of our clothes, because it's a wet, sweaty sport, began to freeze, and we entered into the first stages of hypothermia. Hypothermia progressed through the night. As we sat there and hauled up the rope, it became a 300-foot knot that we had to untie in our haste. I had to take off my gloves to untie the knot, beginning frostbite. My hypothermia, Tim's and my hypothermia, began with violent shivers, and clattering jaw. My jaw was clacking so fast, I had no control over it. My whole body was shaking, and we discussed spending the night right there. But we were sure we were going to die because of our circumstance. And so we decided if we were going to die, we were going to press on. And so we roped to each other in the dark, and we came down that thing, and we were off the ice on the granite. At this point in the night, our hypothermia was far advanced. We consumed all of our extra calories that we had. We hadn't drunk any water in 8 hours. My hands were frozen. My feet were blocks of ice, and we were in serious trouble. And my job was to yank the rope. We discussed Tim helping, but if we took off our gloves to untie the rope, I could drop the rope because my hands were frozen, and Tim might not be able to reach it anyway. So my job, pull the rope, and then hypothermia advanced, and I got hot. And I mentioned I was on the National Ski Patrol. It could be 50 degrees below zero on the mountain with the wind. I know and knew something about frostbite and hypothermia. I knew if I unzipped my coat, because people who are freezing to death, they take their clothes off. And you think, how illogical. You're freezing to death. Why would you? Because your brain's not working. Because the blood rushes from your extremities to your core and you feel like you're hot. And I unzipped my coat. And Tim told me, don't unzip your coat. And I said, I'm unzipping my coat. I'm hot. And I just ignored him and I unzipped my coat and I accelerated my hypothermia. And then I began to understand that I was not getting off this cliff. I began to understand I was never going to get that rope free, and I was going to die right where I stood. And so I started to think about my family, and I started to think about God, and I looked at the incredible starry sky where the galaxy is visible, and there's enough light in the galaxy band to illuminate the earth. And a peace settled over me. And I said a prayer for my family and for myself and for Tim, and I began to fall asleep. And falling asleep is the last and final stage. And when I would fall asleep, my knees would give out from underneath me and I'd collapse to the ledge and smack my helmeted head. Wake me up. I stood up. I repeated this, I don't know how many times, 2, 3, I don't know how many. And the last time I stood up, suddenly I had peripheral vision blackened, like a spotlight on a stage beginning to fade to black, and it closed rapidly, and my circle around my eyes, tunnel vision, last actual final stage of hypothermia, tunnel vision. I did not lose consciousness, and I thought, why have I not lost consciousness? Why am I not asleep? I see only darkness. Why do I feel like I'm not standing, but I didn't fall? And I was confused, and suddenly where the mountain had been suddenly opened up into an incredible vast expanse of darkness. And far, far away, the smallest pinprick of light appeared. And it rushed toward me at incredible speed, faster than the speed of light. And it became larger. And it communicated to me telepathically without language, downloading into me, I'm taking you. And I thought, no, you're not. And I resisted with all the might that I had dug inside myself all night long in the depths of my own will to live. took me like I was nothing. And I was enveloped in this intellect, this comforter, this wholeness that carried me like embracing arms of an angel, but more like a bubble of intellect in which I was contained, and I was rushed out of myself up the tunnel. But the tunnel was the entire darkness compressed. And everything I say is metaphor, and everything I say is paradox, because there's no language on the other side. But I can tell you this first off, I was comforted. I was no longer in pain, and I was not scared. And I was carried up this tunnel, out this tunnel, between dimensions, and I popped into, did I pop into, or did this angel become the entire expanse of? I don't really know for sure. Of this infinite darkness that was illuminated, an illuminated, infinite, eternal darkness that I could see deeply into, but not the end or beginning of. And it was all around me, and I was immersed in this. And I was like a singular consciousness, without form, without molecules, no quarks, no cells, no proteins, no hair, no eyes, no nothing, no thingness. I was no thingness. And I was a singular consciousness where all of my former senses were integrated into the actual consciousness of myself. And without a brain in my way of thinking, I was smarter than I'd ever been. And I thought to myself, this is me. This is me. How did I forget that this is me? That wasn't me. This is me. And I was in comfort. And I could see in every direction at once, as if I had a singular eye, as if I was a singular eye that could see in every direction at once. And my thinking was my seeing, was my beingness. And I tell this in a sequence, a chronological story, but it was timelessness. All time, future, past, and present, all at once. And more than that, not just our timeline, all timelines, in all universes, across all dimensions, existing in a single paradoxical place of oneness of being. And I saw a shimmer, a sheen, a flow, a translucent, transparent, solid opening, flowing, and through this doorway, this opening, this portal, another tunnel, arcing far, far, far into the distance of the darkness of the illumination itself. And I reached because I desired it. And I reached with my consciousness and I touched this flow, this shimmering, translucent, transparent, solid flow. And as I touched it, it was all life. It was the all in all. It was all living. It was all that makes all exist. All love, all beauty, all wisdom, all intellect, all knowledge. And it flowed into me. And in the flowing into me, I heard my name called. But it wasn't Peter. It was the name of the creation of my soul unspeakable. I saw the self-creation of my soul, the separation into limitedness from unlimitedness, as if I was a singular photon, superpositioned, part of the unlimitedness and yet limited, both wave and particle at the same time. And I saw the elongation, everlasting essence of the whole time of my soul in timelessness. And all the lives I had lived, but I can't see them now. And they seem to me to be lived by me simultaneously, because I was in timelessness, and I can't even tell you what world they were in. But I also then knew that I was known. I knew that I was fully and utterly known by the knower, and nothing about me was unknown, and I went into my life review. I went through the hell that I had created for everyone in my life. All the hell I gave away, all the suffering I gave to people, all the pain I caused others with intention and without intention was mine. It turns out my karma was 10,000 times worse than I had ever imagined it to be, because I was carrying all the pain I gave away. I gave to myself, and it was magnified 10,000 times, a metaphor number. And I went through the experience from every single person's point of view. I felt the pain that I gave them, and I felt my justifications. I saw my reasoning. I understood why I did it, and I was ashamed and guilty. I declared myself guilty. And the voice, capital V, capital T, the voice, spoke inside of me and was the entire unity of all the illuminated darkness that I could see. And it was completely next to me. But it was also inside of me, but I couldn't see it. I could see everything, but I couldn't see the origin of the voice itself. And it says, I love you, I made you, you're my beloved, I know you, I forgive you, I've always loved you. And I then saw that all of the love that I had ever given away in my life was my treasure to keep. And all the love that had been given to me was my treasure to keep. And the love had more value than all of the pain that I had caused. And I saw that every human being had an equality of suffering in the world that we cause to each other. And none is greater or lesser than the other because of the comparative of the limited to the unlimited, to perfection, to imperfection, to purity, to impurity. It wasn't my fault that I was a created being living in the universe causing suffering. That is the nature of a universe that consumes itself, from black holes sucking down entire galaxies to microbes consuming proteins. Everything in the universe consumes, and that's the way it is. And I was not at fault for that. And I was unshackled and unburdened through a divine fire of purgative love, of all of the burdens I ever carried, all of the things that I had caused. And when I was forgiven, the love that I had carried with me enabled me to turn my face to the face of love. Metaphor again. And I was infilled with the unit of oneness of being. I was infilled with this combination of things we subdivide here: goodness, truth, knowledge, intellect, understanding, beauty, bliss, paradise, awe, adoration. All these things, knowledge, all of them were infilled into me to the limit of the capacity of my limited soul self, the true me. And one more drop of this oneness of being, this unitive state, and I would have obliterated back into, folded back into the unity itself. And it's what I wanted.